Welcome back once again to the Tech Choice Bootcamp, the UI UX design track. And this is a continuation of Module 9, where we're talking about the high fidelity designs. And the previous video was talking about colors. Now we'll be moving towards spacings. A good mix of bending rules on top of creativity is the key to creating a good user interface. User interface, as we know, is the process of styling the interface of a software or computerized device with an emphasis on appearance and looks. It is a practice that focuses on providing the users highly usable and efficient interfaces. And proper spacing is one of the basic but most important and essential elements in a great design. It helps organize information while also setting the rhythm, structure, and hierarchy in our design. These factors work together and help the designer have a rational approach when it comes to elements such as spacing. So now we'll be talking about the roles of spacing in UI UX design and the spacing roles. Good use of white spaces makes the interface usable and pleasing to the eyes. This is because white spaces adds emphasis to design elements, give users visual cues. It also helps to create visual hierarchy and in turn improves content legibility. Now let's move to the spacing rules. A spatial system is a set of rules for measuring the size and space of the UI elements. Defining a spatial system before going into detailed design will allow for uniformity and will ensure consistency across the design of your product. One of the factors that affect spacing, which is the base unit. Designers are often faced with small but impactful choices when they work. It might not look much, but the height of an image to spaces around a button can change the way your design looks dramatically. Thus, a special system must be used by the designer to maintain consistent product and to maintain a consistent product, yes, and reduce the time the designer spends on communicating and changing the design. The base unit allows you to create the scale of supported sizes in your spatial system. There are different approaches to this, and as a designer, you will encounter increment systems. An example of the space or base unit is the 8-point grid. The 8-point grid uses a base unit of 8 pixels. The dimensions of every UI element is a multiple or a fraction of the base unit. A lot of designers show a preference for the 8-point or 8 pixel linear scale because it is divisible by 4, yes, and 2, which makes it easy to resize any element without ending up with a design with half pixels. Yeah. Whereas if you use 10, you will end up with 5 pixels, 2.5 pixels, and 1.25 pixels respectively. Using half pixels should be avoided as much as possible. Whole pixels will allow you to have precise pixel boundaries and help your UI elements to appear aligned. To have a clear structure and hierarchy in design, this leads us to the second factor, which is sizing. UI elements should be increased or should be in increments of the base unit, whatever base unit you are using, in this case 8 pixels. This can be applied to UI elements like line heights, paragraph spacing, cards, text with input fields and buttons. Doing so will help define a clear structure, hierarchy, and rhythm to your design. These elements can also be applied to various forms of design. Sizing is a key element in creating rhythm in your overall design composition. And this is a basic example of the 8-point grid, where we have the distance between two elements or two texts is in the multiple of 8 or a fraction of 8. For example, the 4 pixels between Ellie Newton and elton@gmail.com, which is the email of the user. Yes, the second factor considered in spacing, which makes up the spacing rule, is padding. What is padding? Um, Padding refers to the space around the contents of elements. Strict padding must be enforced by designers when considering the display of the design into consideration. It can also be applied when the content is less predictable to allow sizes of different elements to follow the content. Consistent padding will not only allow the design to be aesthetically pleasing but have much more better readability. The element sizes may still depend on the rules from your spatial system, but will still help improve the readability in case of user content that is hard to predict. The space between UI elements must be measured in the increments of the base unit as much as possible. And here is an example, still using the 8-point grid. This is an example of a padding where um, the padding is 16 points or 16 pixels. Yes, this is a padding around a card where we have the content of the whole element is padded by 16 pixels. And an example you can see is on the OP web. I think the website is opayweb.com. Yes, if you can see the spacing around the text and the white box, the padding is quite good and it allows for legibility and visual hierarchy, because after seeing the picture you go directly to um the the text, right? Then in conclusion, by respecting information hierarchy, you will increase the user's readability and legibility and make it easier to track and grasp information. You'll have a solid spacing system with a small number of values and application rules, and developers will be able to work quickly now that they are familiar with your spacing system's rules. While just going with the flow is easier than creating and following a structured system, modifying these spacing elements to your design process and encouraging other people to work on the same project might be a challenge. Regardless, doing so will result in a better user experience, fewer changes and revision, and faster product delivery. Okay, that will be all concerning spacing. See you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.